Okay, so we've all heard the warnings, right? AI is coming for our jobs. But what if the story we've been told is completely, totally backward? What if the first role to really become obsolete isn't on the factory floor, but in the corner office? Let's break down this surprising new target of workplace automation.
Yep, the revolution is absolutely here. But you're going to want to forget everything you thought you knew about who's at risk. The automation story is not starting where you'd expect, not even close.
You know, for decades, the story about automation has been incredibly consistent. When we imagined robots taking over, we pictured machines replacing repetitive, manual labor. The focus was always on the assembly line, never the boardroom. That was just the accepted wisdom.
And this really shows the pivot perfectly. The common fear has always been focused downward, on low-wage manual labor. But the emerging reality, backed by new research, is pointing in a completely different direction, straight to the top of the corporate ladder, senior executives. So that brings us to this pretty shocking new target. We're talking about the C-suite, the decision makers, the highest paid people in the entire company. Now, I know it sounds totally counterintuitive, but the logic behind it is actually surprisingly solid.
This right here, this is the core finding that just flips the whole conversation on its head. Early research is showing that senior executives are not just replaceable, but get this, easier and cheaper to replace than a lot of other roles. That's a huge claim. Which leads to the obvious question, doesn't it? I mean, how on earth can the most complex, highest-paid jobs in a company possibly be the most vulnerable to AI? It seems to fly in the face of all logic.
Well, the answer lies in what you could call the efficiency equation. It's not about the prestige of the job or the salary. It's about the very nature of the work itself. And when you really break it down, the day-to-day work of a senior executive is, believe it or not, a prime candidate for automation.
It all comes down to this concept of thinking jobs. These aren't roles based on physical labor, but on mental processing. The main function is to just digest massive amounts of information, market trends, internal reports, you name it, and use all of that to make big strategic decisions.
Just think about what a top executive actually does all day. They're digesting market data, they're analyzing internal reports, forecasting future trends, and evaluating strategic options. It's the bread and butter of the C-suite, and it's all about one thing: processing information.
And here's the crucial link. These exact tasks, these data-heavy analytical functions, that's precisely what modern AIs, like large language models, are built to do. They are, for all intents and purposes, superpowered data digestion machines.
And when you put them side by side, the comparison is just stark. A human executive might take hours, even days, to analyze a complex report, and AI does it in seconds. The cost? A 6- or 7-figure salary versus a pretty cheap subscription. And data capacity? Our human brains are limited, and AI's is practically infinite. The business case just becomes undeniable.
So, if we understand the why, we can now look at the how. How are companies actually responding to this new reality? Well, they're using it as a massive opportunity to completely rethink their structure, specifically by flattening the old corporate pyramid.
You can kind of see the evolution we're witnessing. It starts with that traditional, multi-layered hierarchy we all know. Then AI gets integrated to assist managers. But the final step isn't just assistance, it's replacement. AI takes over those core analytical duties of management, which leads to a much flatter, more streamlined organization.
And let's be really clear about the motivation here. This quote from the research cuts right to the chase. The corporate goal is to, quote, refine headcount. And where better to start that refinement than at the most expensive levels of the company?
This all leads us to a fundamental rethinking of what an executive even is. What does leadership actually look like in the age of AI when the core thinking tasks are outsourced to a machine? Does this mean the rise of a new kind of leader, one whose value is purely in their humanity? You know, their empathy, their creativity, their moral judgment.
Ultimately, the whole conversation around automation has to change. The threat, or maybe the opportunity, is no longer just about manual labor. It's now fundamentally about leadership.
Which leaves us with a final and pretty crucial question to chew on. If an AI can analyze all the data, forecast the trends, and recommend the absolute best strategy, what's the uniquely human role that's left for a leader? In this new world, what does it truly mean to lead?